Yeah, let's move it around all the topics of conversation design, because you tell me some stuff that you've heard and I'll respond back to that, because I probably have thoughts, since jazz dialogue is, one of my things.
Yeah, totally. Okay.
So, that'll be interesting to fold in with everything else that you've got going.
Yeah, totally. And also like the idea of Agile as a design for types of conversations and what it does design for.
Well, I wouldn't phrase it that way, because, look, we're already in the dialogue. So you go ahead
yes,
and give me whatever the warm-up is and use that as the lead-in, right?
Welcome to the Conversation Factory. I'm your host, Daniel Stillman. Each episode, I'll talk to an amazing conversation designer to try and distill insights we can all bring into our work and lives. Human conversation is a material that can be shaped by design, and shifting conversations in everyday meetings, in organizations, and yourself can create real change. And I hope to help you do it better and more authentically. I'd love to have you stay part of the conversation. Head over to theconversationfactory.com to sign up for my newsletter and never miss an episode. That's theconversationfactory.com. I'd also love for you to be part of the show. If there's a challenging transformation you're working through, head over to theconversationfactory.com, click coaching, and sign up for 30 minutes of free coaching that we might use on the show. Head over to theconversationfactory.com, hit coaching, and let me know what conversations you need help redesigning. Enjoy the episode.
My conversation with Alistair Cockburn was Agile to the core. We revised our timeline and deliverables with a quick stand-up and got right into it. After all, Agile principle number 2 is to welcome changing requirements, even late in development. To it, I thought we had an hour. Early on in the call, he asked for 20 minutes tops. Somehow I kept him on for 45, since I'm deft at conversational manipulation, and he was keen to keep it going too. Alistair's quite the nomad, teaching advanced Agile workshops all over the world. When he's not teaching, he might be dancing tango in Argentina or brushing up on his French in Nice. But sometimes the location is too distracting, so he was holed up in Florida, where he had found a town that was just boring enough to allow him some time to get some work done. He was moving house unexpectedly the day we were slated to chat. I saw on Facebook that his Airbnb had a shag carpet and that the humidity and the mustiness mixed with a thick carpet was making him sick. I tried to give him an out, but he was adamant we do our conversation, even for only 20 minutes. His motto, now is better than the future. One of the pleasures and inspirations of talking with Alistair is that he's a man who really lives his principles. For example, Agile principle number 10, that simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. You'll hear how Alistair tries to design his life to make this principle a reality. As I mentioned 2 episodes back with Daniel Mezek around open space Agile transformations, Agile is kicked around a lot in the consulting world these days, but my sense is that all of those people haven't actually read the Agile Manifesto. Alistair is one of the originators and signatories from way back in 2001, and it was a response to a broken way of working. But just like any ideology, it's come to be interpreted in a lot of ways by a lot of people. It was fun to go back to the source. I really enjoyed Alistair disagreeing with my characterization of Agile as a design for conversations, but I see it that way. Agile designs for some conversations and not for others, and refuses to design other conversations. In fact, Alistair has a lot in common with Dave Gray, who I interviewed a few months back. Dave wondered about who has the right to design a conversation and if it can be over-designed. Alistair is a proponent of guest leadership, that making space for momentary, voluntary leadership can powerfully transform work and teams. Alistair and I had what he would term a jazz dialogue, a conversation with a meta-conversation layered on top. I've listened to this episode a few times, and it's a tough one to summarize or encapsulate. One thing that I'm left with is the idea that even the desire for agility, or the hunger for no ideology, is an ideology, which leaves me reflecting on the ways that my own internal tendencies lead to my own ways of seeing things as right. After all, designing a conversation is power. and power should be exercised carefully because I could be wrong. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you next time. Alistair Cockburn, welcome to the Conversation Factory.
Thank you.
I appreciate you making the time. I know that you're moving house and you're so you're drinking. You said you're drinking a glass of red wine. You're eating some salmon. I'm picturing the cup that's in your portable kitchen.
You're right. It's an aluminum wine glass or wine goblet, as they call it. But I use my own pan, as you know. Travel with my own cookware, better typically than I find in the apartments. So it got late. It was about 2:30, and I hadn't eaten. So I found a big slab of salmon in the refrigerator, which I'd cunningly put there yesterday. And I just sear it 2 minutes on the side, salt, pepper, a little bit of olive oil, nothing else, and it comes out so good you can't stand it. I had a glass of red wine, and lunch is complete.
So what?
And then if I get hungry later, I've got piles of fresh fruit and blueberries and nuts and stuff.
So what most people, some people may know you, or people should know you as one of the signatories of the Agile Manifesto. What people don't know is that you travel all over the world and you bring a kitchen with you, which I just think is actually like a lovely. I love your little kitchen box, and it says something. I don't know if I think it says something about who you are. It's a great thing.
Yeah, well, that lovely little kitchen box just got given away. Part of being a nomad is nothing is permanent in my suitcase, and nor is my suitcase. I just wore one out and just replaced it, and the other one I'm looking at it and going, I want to lighten my thing, and then I go get a new piece of luggage. I stopped drinking coffee. I got deathly ill in Buenos Aires 4 months ago, something like that. And inside that time period, I stopped drinking coffee for a couple of weeks. And then when I was fully detoxified, I decided, well, why should I start up again? And I've just been going on herbal teas and stuff. So I carried with me, I don't know if you recall seeing a double wall stainless steel French press coffee maker.
Yeah. So that's out.
And about a half a pound of ground coffee beans and, sugar, this and that and all the rest of it. So in lightening up my load when I was in Salt Lake last time, I just took that out and put it away. And I now carry, if I want a cup of coffee, I probably have enough ground coffee beans for about 5 or 6 cups. I've got, quarter cup of that. And I made a special filter. You make a tea sieve. You take a tea strainer and you put the filter that's in the French press, and I just cut it and I put 2 of them in it, so it's a little bit tighter weave than actually was in the French press. So I just make up, like cowboy coffee if I need a cup of coffee, and I just pour it through the sieve, and it's my own drip filter, but it's the size and weight is everything to me.
You are it's
the size and weight of a tea strainer.
You're a very precise man, Alistair. I love this about you. So I have a question. I've been reading Crystal Clear, and there's a quote in it that I really love. I love the introduction to the idea of Crystal Clear being a conversation between you and Crystal Clear.
Crystal.
Yeah, which is great. Sign CC.
It's not Crystal Clear, but Crystal.
Crystal.
Who wrote the Clear. Yeah.
So they are in close enough communication that they know what is important and what is happening. That is enough to keep them in step with each other, and they let the dance, as it were, improvise itself around them. So when I read that, I know about your love for dancing. And what's interesting to me, because just what you were talking about with your coffee, there's like a balanced dialogue between your precision and your improvisation. And
well, that's an interesting observation. Do say more.
Well, I mean, because with dancing, dancing is a very precise, especially you do tango, and tango's very precise. And I see on Facebook you talking about like careful ways of recording steps. But in the moment in the dance, it's improvisational. I feel. Maybe that's just because I'm a swing dancer.
No, you're the first person to make this observation, and I think you're completely correct. Wasn't anything that crossed my mind before, so now I'm intrigued.
Well, so, what does this say about your way of working or how you say people should work? Because when you talk about Agile, you're talking about it at this level of the thing of, hey, we're just running around and doing stuff. It's good, right?
Well, it's really interesting. So what you've done, and besides which, let me just point out, I never say how anybody should work. that's anathema to me, and I couldn't do it.
Fair.
Because that would be like presupposing that I know better than anybody what's going on in their life, which I don't. There's so many details in anybody's life that affect what is the correct thing that they might optimally do, but I for sure don't know it. So I never tell anybody what they should do. If I'm in charge, then I do stuff. Then I just do whatever I do.
Mm.
If I'm not in charge, then I maybe tell stories or have thoughts or nominate, introduce techniques that might be useful. But I expect everybody to decline, and this is typically the case also, decline my advice and go off and do whatever the heck they feel like. And later, if it works, then I go ask them what they did, and then I just add that to my kit bag of stuff.
Mm.
But when you talk about my way of working, and this is why I'm fascinated by your observation. And by the way, we are in dialogue design right now, and I've been watching it, how you've been cunningly structuring it. I didn't know if you knew you were cunningly structuring it, but you have been cunningly structuring it. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, sir.
In terms of this thing with precision and looseness, and it's a very deep in my personality way of behaving, which, like I said, nobody's ever commented on before. And crystal clear was phrased by Martin Fowler as the sloppiest methodology that could possibly work. And he's completely correct, because I'm just really fundamentally, on the one side, this is bipolar kind of a thing. On the one side, I'm really sloppy, I'm really lazy, I really don't want to have to care. I arrange my life with the maximum amount of freedom, the maximum amount of don't caredness that could possibly be, so that I can either get out of bed or not get out of bed, or do or not do, or show up or not show up, or whatever.
Yes.
And to make that work, not like it's designed this way, but this is just what's evolved through my living. There are a small handful of things that I get absolutely detailed about. So someone told me once, Alistair, you scare me when you go into the details, because when I go into the details, I go all the way down to the bottom. Right, just keep going and going and going, and lose most people.
Yes.
But if you get a few things super detailed, they anchor a lot of sloppiness.
Yes. Yes.
And in the style of telling stories, which is, one of my preferred ways of operating these days, when I was in my 20s, I needed to make bookshelves. And as it happened where I had an infinite supply of plywood sheets, 6 foot by 4 foot plywood sheets, and no money.
Mm.
And so I wanted to make bookshelves. And I had a lot of these bookshelves. I had I can't even remember, 4 shelves high, 6 foot long, and I had 2 or 3 of these things. That's a lot of sheets. And I didn't want bricks, which is what most people use to stack up bricks, as the vertical part. I decided I was going to use plywood. So I did a thought experiment,
that's what you had.
And said, yep. And I said, so it needs to be, pick a number, 10 inches high on the one side. That has to be pretty accurate, so it stays flat. But the other side doesn't have to be any particular length. And you could make a box, but I'm too lazy. So I made an L shape. So I borrowed a friend's bandsaw, and I took these things, and I measured the 10 inches. I cut one long strip, 10 inches. And the other ones, I just kind of whacked them out. I whack. Drove him mad, because he was a precision craftsman, and there I am just whacking out pieces of wood like I don't even care. And glued them together and made these L shapes. And if you make an L shape, actually, it takes up less space on your bookshelf, and it holds up your bookshelf, and it's real lazy. And you actually don't care how long the 2 legs of the L are, as long as they're all 10 inches high. You don't care.
Yes.
So there's an early example, right, of being very precise about the 10 inches high. And with that thought experiment, being absolutely sloppy about the whatever length the L pieces were.
The base is not required at all, right? It's just some stability.
Yeah, it's something and something. It's about right, and who cares?
So fixing what's important, and then letting the other parts be unfixed.
Boom. There you've got it. Now in the terms of transferring from a sample story to other places, if you look at Crystal Clear, very, very fixed on, you put the people in a room or adjacent offices so that nobody has to walk more than about, 10, 12 seconds to get from anybody to anybody. Osmotic communication, accidental overhearing, frequent interaction with users and customers, getting answers multiple times a week. delivery every month in those days, quicker maybe now. And if you pay attention to that, and this is connected to the heart of Agile, right? If you pay attention to a couple of key things, everything else falls out. So if they're all in a room, they overhear each other, they talk to each other. Everybody knows what everybody's doing. It's not a mystery. You don't actually need a daily stand-up.
Yes.
And if you're getting questions asked by the customers and you're delivering, pretty frequently, you're getting feedback, everybody knows what's going on, and you can forget about pretty much everything else. And that's why crystal clear is the sloppiest methodology that could possibly work, or the way I like to think about it, the least invasive culturally. I don't like to invade somebody else's culture. I'm always a visitor everywhere I go. So they have their own things, and if they're talking to each other and a few other things, it sorts itself out.
So there's like a lot.
So that's why your observation about precision and looseness and improv, it was so interesting. Because I think you're onto something there.
Well, I mean, it's there in the words. It just you literally say. I mean, I think you are actually. I mean, obviously, you wrote both sides. You wrote both of the sides of the conversation, obviously, but I think you're speaking through Crystal very clearly. No pun intended. Because there's one of the responses where you say like, Alistair, please get serious. These are grown people. They have normal mental equipment. What do? They look around. They think. They talk to each other. That's what they do. And so it's really interesting. You just said this idea of being a guest everywhere you go, that there's a certain amount of respect that you're giving to everyone, a certain amount of dignity.
Right. Well, this would be probably in common now with Ben Mezek, my friend Jerry Derbier in Paris, and Ken Schwaber, where we do something different than many people. We assume that people bring their whole adult person to the workplace in the morning.
Mm.
And what's really interesting is I start my classes, not always, but sometimes I'll remember to say this, and I'll say, we're in this class and we're all adults. And so many people leave their adultness, I won't say adulthood, but adultness outside the door. They open the door to go to work. The adult part stays outside, and a kindergartner goes inside who, types according to whatever the teacher says. Pretend instead that the whole full adult person who has a mortgage and kids and drives dangerous vehicles on dangerous roads and all this kind of stuff, brings a full adult person, the whole thing, into the workplace, into the office, into the class.
Yeah.
Then that person is a totally different being, the way they interact, the way they converse, the way they take responsibility, initiative, the way they look to the left and the right, and they're responsible now for the moral, ethical behavior of their neighbors and, the rest of that stuff.
Yeah.
It changes. Now, when I say that in a class, boom, you just watch the body tone of everybody in the class changes. They all relax and they all become adults.
Mm.
Boom. It's like something happens when I say those words in classes. It's fabulous. And I go, so look, we're here. We're going to have a conversation for a couple of days. We're all adults. I got a bunch of conversational topics, and you guys are in charge of your comfort, air conditioning, your phone, your kids, your work calls, whatever it is. Right. So you guys, everybody just take care of that. And let's just go, and I'll kind of guide the conversation and run some exercises and so on. And man, the change in the room is so fabulous at that moment.
I think it's really beautiful, Alistair. Hey, this is Daniel. We're about the halfway point, so this is a great time for you to get up, stretch your legs, get some popcorn, fill up your soda. If you're in the car, stay focused. If you have your hands free, this is also a great moment to head over to theconversationfactory.com to sign up for the newsletter. I send out more detailed write-ups, insights, and tools from these conversations, and I'd love to share them with you. So head over to theconversationfactory.com and stay in the loop. So there's two topics that I wanted to talk to you about today we haven't hit on, and I want to make sure we talk about a little bit before we hop out. One was guest leadership. And it seems like what you're doing when you respect other people this way is you say, I want you to step forward whenever you want to step forward. And I've been looking at some of the boards you've been posting about what guest leadership enhances and what it inhibits. And because I wasn't in the workshops, not all of the sticky notes make sense.
No, they don't even make sense when you're in the course. People say stuff and I have them explain it and I go, look, I'll put it up here. I'm not exactly sure, but okay, that's what happens with sticky notes. Sure.
And it also seems like it's an idea that you are trying to, I mean, not to use this word too much, but start a conversation around it. Seems like it's an idea that you find attractive and interesting. You don't purport to know everything there is to know.
No, it isn't. No, exactly. It's just a phrase. What happens if the guests are the leaders, right? Just put that little thought bubble inside your head and just let it percolate. I just think it's fascinating. I'm allergic to authority, so it suits me. Millennials are supposedly allergic to authority, so it suits them.
Yes.
Agile people are supposed to be self-organizing, so it suits them. Workplaces need more decentralized decision-making, so it suits them. So it's just a really interesting pair of words, and I'm just kind of pulling on the thread just to see what's there, what happens. I'm just going.
What have you learned so far?
And by the way, you can look. I'll save you some trouble. You can look online. Type in Cockburn Guest Leadership. There's an article I wrote, published on my website as a research report, and published also in Cutter IT Journal, which is a lot harder to get a copy of, in which I summarized the first several workshops. So you can just look in there, and I went through all the sticky notes and kind of digested them down and so on. So you can look at the results of the first couple of workshops there.
Yeah.
I won't try to recapture all of that. The idea, though, and I'm very sensitive when you talk about conversation design. I'm very sensitive to verbs and linguistics and stuff like that, and in particular, power, shifts of power. And again, this would be in common with Daniel Mesick, maybe. And you said, I want people to step forward when they want to step forward. No, I don't want. I can't have wants for other people. I gave up that idea a long time ago. So linguistically, we can't say that sentence.
Yeah.
I am curious. I'm curious what it is that entices people, enables people, that triggers them, that inhibits them, that motivates them at some moment to step forward or not step forward and take a moment of leadership that lasts for a minute or an hour or a couple of days, and then they melt back into the generic group of people that they're with.
Yes.
I'm curious about that, and I would like to see more of that happening, but it's not that I want any other group of people to do that.
Yes.
I'll be happier if more of that's going on, because I think that's basic good citizenship that we use in society all the time. And I'm just pulling on this thread and seeing what's there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the Post-it notes I wrote down was that it enhances this feeling it must be done, and I think there is something beautiful about the idea that if somebody sees something that must be done, that they look to the left and look to the right, as you said, and they say, "Oh, well, I guess it's me."
Yeah, and the question is, what triggers that moment that says it's mine, right? I'll take this on. And some of the funnest ones I happen to enjoy is empathy. People just feel sorry or feel empathy for another person or another group. So it's why we get customer ombudsmen showing up in projects, right? Or
right.
Anybody helping anybody outside of work, cross the street, put the rollerboard in a high carry-on, in the luggage over space or whatever.
Well, it's funny because the opposite of guest leadership, I mean, this is just my own experience, is that when I see something that needs to be done and I don't do it, I'm hiding from my own intuition. And that's actually a really negative experience.
What's interesting here is someone in one of my workshops, they played the Dundee Card at me and said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And I accepted it because I couldn't think fast enough to see what was wrong with it, and the room was in a mood they needed to see success. So I accepted it. But it has a lot of these things have funny boomerang effects, and it took me, like overnight, and the next day I go, that's what's wrong with it. If you are the change you want to see in the world, and if the change you want is that people take leadership moments voluntarily, and that therefore you're going to take leadership moments, that will boomerang and backfire on you, because everybody will say, "Oh, Daniel's the guy who does all that stuff. I can relax." Or Daniel's a bit of a pain in the neck because he always steps forward, or something, right? So in fact, stepping forward all the time won't necessarily entice other people to step forward. So be the change you want to see in the world isn't strictly going to get you there in the case of guest leadership. So that was fascinating to see the bounce back on that.
That's totally fair. But I think in your sense, you are the change you want to see in the world, because you're asking people, what does this mean to you? And inviting their adult selves to step forward and be responsible.
Yeah. Well, I'm really, really, really big on laissez-faire. And it's really funny because I get very dictatorial in my classes. And there's a few things I get dictatorial about. If I'm having a dialogue with someone in a class, The dialogue's not for me and it's not for them. It's for the others in the class.
Yes.
I've done dialogues hundreds of times, and I'll learn whatever I learn, and the person will get something out of the dialogue. But other people in the class will think like we're back to the kindergartners or first graders again, that this is a test from the teacher, and they start talking to each other.
Mm.
And I get really, really seriously bent out of shape and go, look, this dialogue isn't for me, and actually isn't for him or her. It's for all of you. You're in the class, the advanced class in particular. You're in the class to see how dialogues happen. We're talking about dialogue design here.
Yes.
And what you should be watching is the nature of the dialogue, not just the information content, but when do I challenge? When do I let go? When do I accept something I don't even believe in? When do I not accept something that's pretty close and I could easily accept? Like when do I push back or not? If you guys are paying attention in the advanced class, that's the interesting part of the class, not the information content, but the manner in which dialogues and challenges are happening. And what does that mean to the energy level to the other people in the class? So in my advanced class, you have to go through it a minimum of 3 times. First time is just some first pass, raw information content, encounter the games, go through some stuff, right? Second time with the exact same lectures, the exact same games, you know what the tricks are in the games. You allegedly heard the lecture once before. You start to integrate it and see the structure and the patterns across the exercises and the lectures, and you apply your own stories and so on. When you go through the third time, so you've been to the exercises twice, you've heard the lecture twice, you start to watch the behavior of the other people. You finally have some free neurons. And you watch the behavior of the other people in the room, and that's what I consider to be really interesting in the advanced class when people come like the third time, and they start watching the dialogue or dialogues. And sometimes I screw up and I'm too hard or I'm too soft or I move too fast or whatever. But the people who've been 3, 4, 5 times, they just say they just love watching the energy in the room as it circulates around, and people get bored or not bored or challenged or scared or aggressive if they want to take me on and
Alistair,
give me a bit of my own medicine back.
I apologize for interrupting, but you said something that's very interesting because I feel like there's the ability of a facilitator to see energy in a room. It's a very interesting idea. I don't know can everyone see it? Can they be trained to see it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what happens in the advanced class. And so I'm going to keep coming back to this. People use power words, and I've become I've always been sensitive, but over the last couple of years, super sensitive to power words. And you use the word facilitator. So the facilitator is an authority in a room. The facilitator has permission to shut people up. This is basically the power they have, or change the conversation. So given that I'm allergic to authority, maybe I'm a millennial born just a couple of decades too early or something. I don't like facilitators. I mean, I'm a facilitator. I've done it professionally and so on. That's why I don't like host leadership or servant leadership or command leadership, but guest leadership is when everybody's a leader for a minute.
Yes.
It's fully distributed. We don't have a boss. Or you may have a boss, but if you have a good boss that really, really, really let things go and let people kind of run their own lives, and if you've got people feeling, motivated and belonging, whatever.
So that gets us to the idea of your love of jazz dialogue. Are you also a lover of open space dialogue? Like, what are the patterns that you're?
Well, before we get there, and I appreciate you watching the time because I don't have a lot, but let's just go a little bit more.
Yeah. I
don't want to be finished with that because it's been more recent that I've noticed this deep allergy I have to power words. Although obviously I occupy a power center when I walk into a room full of Agileists because of my position, my personality, and so on. But I don't like people telling me what to do. I don't like to tell them what to do. And I actually don't like people watching other people tell other people what to do. It really kind of hurts me all through and all inside. So when you say the facilitator watches the energy, all the people who come to my Agile class, they're in whatever roles they're in. I don't know, the programmers, testers, executives, whatever role they happen to be. If they bother to come 3, 4, 5 times, this is like a dojo, right? You don't just go to a martial arts class for a weekend and come out with your black belt, right? You go many, many, many times. Anybody, I love it. Anybody is at work and they're watching, like, how are the beginners reacting? Who's resisting? Are they resisting because they don't like it, or because they're a beginner, or because there's an authority push, or where is that? How are the experienced people behaving? Are they busy being impatient? Are they being patient? Are they teaching? Are they enabling? Are they pushing? Are they pulling? What? Right? So yeah, everybody can do that. And this is the self-awareness portion of the advanced class. Is just to give people a chance. So my job in that class is to just like periodically stop, go meta, and say, so this just happened.
Yes.
For those of you who are up to it, you
Totally.
might notice that this just happened.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that gets really interesting when you get 2 or 3 people who've been in the class a couple of times or just at that level of listening themselves. They're watching the energies and they're watching the meta dialogues. And I have a nice airplane overhead. I had one class in which there were 3 people in the class who were absolutely, totally suited to meta and meta conversations. And I was able to have 3 levels of conversation at the same time. One, I would say something to the class. Second thing is I would reflect on the meaning of that inside the class. And the third one is I would talk to these 2 or 3 guys about the fact that, we had just done that. And these guys were able to keep up. So it was awesome.
Isn't that a pleasure, though? That must have been an extra pleasure for you to be able to speak at all those levels.
Right, because we're in dialogue design, right?
Yes.
So the fact that I noticed that this happened in the room, and these guys also noticed that this happened in the room, but they could watch me, which I can't watch.
Yes.
So they could play back, how they observed the way the interactions in the room shifted. Right? And the people who were in the first visit who are on at that level, they don't even notice. There were some random sentences that got said that weren't for them. Like pass by them, and they wait for the next piece of content to show up.
Yeah. Amazing.
So that's now let's reflect for a moment. We've been talking for 25 minutes. We've been doing dialogue design.
Yes.
And you brought up, you changed the direction or set the conversation early with the bringing up crystal clear. Why did you do that? What was on your mind about that?
It's a really interesting question. Well, 2 things. One, it gives you respect, right? I actually want to show respect for your work and what you've done.
Thank you.
2, I thought it was an amazing quote, and it was interesting to me.
It was. I had no idea that such a poetic sentence was in there till you read it. I went, oh, that's kind of a beautiful sentence to be in a tech book.
Yeah. Well, and also that part of the book is very human. And
yeah,
I think one of the things that I personally find interesting about you as a person is what we talked about in the very beginning, how you design your life. And I think that goes to what we are allergic to and what we prefer, right? And so, I don't know, were you a dancer back then?
I've danced all my life. My sister, from grade school on, wanted to be a professional ballerina.
Yeah.
And she was 1 year older than me, so I kind of followed her around. And we did Scottish country dancing in my house. And then later in my teen years, did Israeli, Balkan folk dance and modern dance. And then after college, ballet, jazz dance. And then later ballroom dance and tango and like anything now.
Yeah. So, I mean, just for that, I think, you bring everything to who you are. Like you said, you bring your whole adult person to the thing. And it was just interesting to me. I was like, oh, this is a great dancing analogy. And I thought it would be interesting to unpack it from that human perspective.
So there's one more thing. You've gotten into some pretty deep space here very quickly, and I appreciate that. One of the latest insights that I had about myself, and checked in with a friend who knows me very well here in Gulfport. Shout out to Nick Cementa. It appears I used to think that I ran everything on my rational conscious engineering portion of my brain, prefrontal cortex, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then maybe Nick kind of commented that I don't. I just I closed down my brain and I let my body take over, and it does whatever it does. So if I interrupt someone, I'll do it just because I'm in the moment. My body just wants to interrupt, not because my brain says it's a good thing to do. So if I'm doing something in life, I'll walk across the street without caring where I am or if it's legal or illegal, or whatever I do tends to be because the non-thinking, non-rational portion of my, and I'll say full body, not even just brain, just demanded it, just did whatever it did. And that's where, dancing, acting, improvising, just being. I actually allow my body to run a couple of seconds ahead of my brain. And it does stuff. And I've kind of learned to trust it. And then my brain comes along after the fact, picking up the pieces and trying to make a backstory as to why that was a good thing to have done, right?
Yeah, storytelling.
And so, for example, for the heart of Agile, which we should at least pass through, just says all you need to do is collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. You don't need anything more than these 4 words done, and study them and do them. And people can look up heartofagile.com if they want.
Yeah.
When I was teaching an advanced class that had been challenged to make a structure for this thing I was messing with at the time, I didn't give it any thought. I was standing at a whiteboard before the class, and I drew a shape, and I wanted a shape that was different than all other shapes. So I made a diamond shape, not a square. And I just figured, I don't know, I just drew these lines, bisecting it. And then I just wrote 4 words in it. The first, I didn't even think, literally did not think, I don't know, what word shall I put in here? I wrote collaborate, so was the first word on my mind. And so I deliver. And then I separated reflect and improved into 2 things. And I looked at it and I said, I don't know, there we are. And then I just ran it and tested it. And it's, held up for a couple of years under a lot of tests. And then I stuck it in PowerPoint. And I'm no good at design, so I just picked 4 kind of light colors. I didn't waste any time on it. I said, there it is. And then 6 months or a year later, someone says, you ought to really redesign the logo and make the colors better and the thing. And the other people said, no, it's what it is. You don't need anything more. So I have this thing that just bounced out of my body in a moment, but I trust my body. And so it came out and seems to be holding together really, really, really well. And is the focus of most of what I do in my teaching. It's a center. It's not what I teach. I teach lots of details.
Well, and the heart is actually at the center. You actually have a little heart at the center.
Yeah, exactly. And the word heart actually is derived from the Japanese word kokoro, which means essence or heart, not like I Heart New York.
Now, you're a lover of poetry. I don't know. Are you a Mary Oliver lover? Do you know her work?
No, there were 2 poets that I like, but I can't remember names. E.E. Cummings is one, and who's the woman who was famous? She wrote in the late 1800s, I think, 700 poems, and she sent some to someone, and they said, no, those will never amount to anything. So she went through a period of about 10 years, wrote 1,000 poems, and just stuck them in her closet. And after she died, they found them. And if you were to name her, I would recognize, and I love her poems. They're very free-flowing.
Mary Oliver has a poem where she talks about loving what the soft animal body of yourself loves. Just loving what you love and just loving what your body tells you. I do have a question though, because I'm looking at the diagram and it is interesting. Deliver is at the top, and Agile is designed for pushing stuff out.
Yeah, there's no design to that. I happened to write the word collaborate on the left at 9:00, but I wasn't thinking of a clock face.
Yes.
I wasn't thinking of people starting at the top. I wrote collaborate. I actually wrote in the sequence collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve.
Yeah.
And I speak it, collaborate, to deliver, reflect, to improve. And it's an accident. And I'm kind of happy with it. I don't care. Just 4 words. You can, you collaborate, you reflect on the collaboration, you improve the collaboration, you deliver, you reflect on the delivery, you improve the delivery. So there's a couple of little loops going on in there.
It doesn't have to be linear. Fun. Yeah.
It's 4 words. Can't be that hard. So let's start to close out. Let's jump to jazz dialogue, which is what we've been doing.
Yeah.
And I'll just put that on stage here for a moment. We have run in Salt Lake City since 1998 or 1999 a roundtable every month, first Thursday of the month, continuously since 1998-99. And we'll get between 6 and 18 people, and we make a little circle. And we typically let people take topics 20 minutes at a time. What's on your mind? Who wants to talk about anything? And inside those 20 minutes, the question is a little bit how to make it interesting. And so shout out to my friend and colleague, Jonathan House, who's one of those people who operates at all 3 levels. And shout out also to Jeff Patton, who at that time had time to come to the roundtables quite a lot, and also can operate at multiple levels of conversation. Now, one of the things that that these guys noticed was there's a kind of a patterning in the movement of the 20 minutes of dialogue that makes it interesting.
Yes.
And I said, yeah, I think there's a skill in making dialogue interesting. And you've been showing that skill in this interview, and I've been playing back to you a little bit.
Yes.
So you get a chance to talk, I get a chance to talk. I take more time, but you get runs on occasion. And so what we decided, I said, look, there's an art. And when I'm on stage in a panel, in a discussion on stage, at a conference or something, to try to make it interesting for the audience, there's a little art to that, and nobody appreciates. People get into the content. So people have been listening to the content of this dialogue between you and me. But interesting is to look at the structure. When did I deliberately shut up? When did you choose to interrupt me? When did you change the conversation? What did I take, right?
Yes.
If we've done our job well, this is an interesting conversation for people to listen to. And that the fact that you are skilled at this, I'm skilled at this, if we're lucky, has made it interesting because it turns around and around. So we actually did, just for fun, one evening we actually rented out the library, the downtown library, or got a room, had a camera crew, and we ran several kind of mini sessions, 15-minute sessions, in which we first took a problem in software like our roundtable, and we dialogued about it. And then we invited the people in the audience to comment on the way the dialoguing happened. Just like if you listen to jazz music and you get jazz musicians, they don't just hear the notes, they watch the interplay of the instruments. What would happen if they were to comment on the interplay of the instruments?
Mm.
But jazz musicians aren't wordsmiths. They're musicians.
Yes.
But if we're doing jazz dialogue, then we're wordsmiths. So we're wanting people who can use words to articulate what they saw in the interplay of the mood and the words.
Were there some principles that you learned? Some insights from that?
It was done as an experiment. We've been doing the roundtable. Part of it is a little bit like I've been totally dominating this, but not totally. You have changed the topic a couple of times. I've changed the topic a couple of times. I've been quiet, let you run.
You've resisted me changing the topic a couple of times as well, which I loved, which was wonderful.
Yeah. I wasn't done with that. I got a couple more bars to play on that thing there. Yeah. Now, if we had 3 or 4 people, Jonathan House, Kay Johansson, shout out to Kay Johansson. So what we found was most of the people in the audience, when we said, let's dialogue about the dialogue, they couldn't. They wanted to kibitz on the advice given in the dialogue. They were in the content. And a few people, like Kay Johansson, I just mentioned, who also knew some of the personalities, would say, well, I noticed that so-and-so tried to speak and you shut him up, and I was kind of wanting that person to speak, or that was a good time to cut that off, or right. And I still think it would be interesting to practice this on stage, like literally at conferences and places. Get 3 or 4 people to do dialogue, but after 15 minutes, you don't get to talk about the content of the dialogue. You only get to talk about the way the dialogue moves.
I think only conversation designers or people who are interested in this type of thing would be the people who want to have that meta conversation would want to have that meta conversation.
Well, let's suppose that that's 10% of the audience. So if you have 200 people in the audience, that's 20 people. Yeah. That's quite a lot of people who would be interested in conversation design and what worked well and didn't work well inside the movement of the themes.
I would very much love to have that conversation anytime. That'd be a fun conversation for sure.
Yeah, let's do it. And you're obviously skilled at this, so that's 2, and we get a couple other people. If you and I are in there, because we can both be meta and watching the conversation structure while the content's happening. Some other people don't. They're just in the content, whatever. That doesn't matter. You have a couple of people who care. So let's find a chance sometime. Let's run it. And just call it Jazz Dialogue.
Love it.
Just do round 2 of it.
Alistair, thank you so much for the time and your presence.
Thank you.
It's a delight to chat with you.
Yeah, I said I'd give you 20 minutes and we took 40 minutes, but there you go. I wasn't willing to stop anytime sooner.
Well, I think the present afforded us the opportunity to do it, so I appreciate
Excellent.
it.
I look forward to it. Now I'm going to go back and backfill and listen to some of the other conversations and listen to the structure of the dialogue and see how it differs And you can also do that as you go with other people
Oh, yes.
at different personal power levels. Observe. You've done enough. You can watch the way the dialogue happens.
I've learned a lot about, I can listen to my breathing patterns, and I edit those out. I can hear when I try to, I'm like, I'm getting bored with this, or I want to move it forward. And I look at that, and I'm sometimes ashamed of myself, honestly, Alistair. I'm like, wow.
Well, you moved it forward because I told you we only had 20 minutes. And so right at the 22-minute mark, you decided to move it forward, which I appreciated. And I just said, yeah, I'll get, stay on.
Well, I also figured you'd tell me to shut up when it was time to go.
Yeah, exactly. But I think we've rounded it out for those who wanted the content. They got the content. Yeah. For those who are interested in dialogue design, they can mine it for whatever they'd like to. And I think this is a fabulous topic of podcast. So thanks a lot for inviting me in.
Thank you, Alistair. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
And we're going to leave it right there. Thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or Google Play. Thanks for your fine attention, and I'll see you next time.